I'm going to show you guys something absolutely crazy. And depending on how you guys have gotten to know me, I think you may have already seen some of these stuff before. So, in the last 45 months, to give you guys a little bit of background, um, when I did my courses, this was like about 2, 3 years ago, I passed all of those on the first try, except C3. So, not to scare the C3 people, but C3 did kick my ass. So the rest of them were pretty okay for me. So I passed those on my first try. C1, I passed within 5 days, so 89%. Um, and I basically made the video on YouTube going through how I actually did in 5 days. But it was a lot of studying, a lot of hours, obviously doing the right things, but a lot of hours. C4, I did within 12 days, so that was within 92%. And then simulation, number two, I did within, the week, and I got 96% on that. So basically did okay on my courses, not too bad, right? And that was just based on a lot of studying, a lot of trial and error, figuring out what works and what doesn't work. And then since then, I kind of started, actually working in real estate. So it's been, a few years now that I've been in real estate. I've, created a Facebook group that many of you guys are in as well, because that's where I started giving out the notes for free so people could use those. And, now I got like the notes and the videos and checklists all on my website for free as well. So if you haven't caught that, go ahead and download those. And then we've tutored so many amazing people. And we got so many beautiful people in here today that also helped as well. So thanks guys for joining. But yeah, it's been really, really nice because over time, after 200, 300, 400 people, there's a lot of patterns that show up, and those are the patterns I want to share with you guys today. What actually works, what doesn't work, what comes up often, what doesn't come up. These are kind of stuff that we go through in the group sessions. Um, but, with all these students, there's always a good percentage of students, maybe the top 5 or 10% that get through the courses really, really easily. Like they have no problem. And again, like I still failed C3 like one time, right? But these people are better than me. And there's patterns of what they do right and what they don't do. And so those are the kind of techniques I want to give you guys today. So together, it's just to show that I've done a lot of reading, a lot of content, a lot of hours into all of this kind of Humber materials. There's tons of research stuff created out there. And it's to show that in the last 45 months, this stuff really does work. So these notes and these checklists, these things that I give for free as well, these are not things I'm holding back. These are things that really work, and you know, it's just really hard to give so much information in a small 10-minute video. Which is why the group sessions are there because it's much more in depth. But with that being said, the search just show you a little bit that this is not something I haven't done myself, and you're going to see a lot of things online for people who don't actually know the content, and they'll be selling stuff from when they did it years and years and years ago. And I did my courses, back in 2021, but I'm still so involved because I'm doing this on the daily with people that are passing the course today. So the content that I teach is so much more updated, right? It's very different from when I did it. But there's a lot of people that you're going to see online who are selling stuff that, you know, might not be totally applicable. So after all of this kind of stuff, I'm going to show you guys those few things I've learned, that's helped me pass and some of the hundreds of people I tutored. And I'm going to save you all of those hours that I took and all of those years that I took to study so you guys don't have to do that. Okay? So before we kind of jump in, just to give you guys a perspective, because I know sometimes it feels daunting. It feels like, C2, for example, is so long and so big. Like, the recommended time on Humber, I think, is 3 months or more. I might be wrong, but I think it's 3 months. So just to give you guys an idea, it doesn't have to take months for your courses, doesn't have to be super hard, and it doesn't have to be very stressful, right? It really depends on what your schedule is, what systems you have around you, and how are you studying, what are the habits that you're using. So one of the biggest things I can share with you guys today, which would help the most of you guys and to help you kickstart, is going to be habits and strategies, right? Like I could explain something very specific to you about, you know, any one of the courses, but it's going to be so specific, it's not going to help you that far. If I explain you a habit, right, kind of like teaching you to fish, that's going to go much, much longer. Okay. So most of the students that I do in the group sessions, they usually study 1 to 2 hours a day, and they're usually able to do a few practice questions, a few hundred practice questions, and then they pass within 3 weeks. Now, there's not all of them, but most of them are able to do that. And that's just to give you perspective. You can probably do the same on your own or sooner if you're able to do the right things. Okay. So, uh, three things we're going to cover today. We're going to look at what are the habits of these top performing students. What are these people that are passing on the first try? What are they actually doing right? That we can copy. Second, what are some three actionable ways to increase your scores? So three things we can actually do today that can increase our scores automatically. And then what are four strategies to pass faster? Basically, just some additional things that, again, you can apply based on your studying, based on, more of the long run. So looking in the long term so that we don't finish our license within a year, but maybe 6 months. What can we do with the long run of those courses to try to get that to be done faster? Okay, so we're going to look at the minute details for this specific exam. What do we do to get this done fast? And then for the long run, what do we do to get that done faster as well? Okay, and then we'll do some Q&A at the end if you guys have some questions. And then hopefully get you guys, kick-started into, making some better progress on the exam. Okay, and this is just some of the free stuff that I was mentioning before. You guys can go to that website. You can take a picture, screenshot, type in that URL. If you don't already have the notes, the checklist, the free quiz, I give all of these on the website for free. And obviously, there's also the YouTube channel, which I have tons of free videos now as well. So you can go to that website, check it out for free. And then we're going to get started with the habits of the top performing students. Okay. So are we all good to go? Give me a thumbs up. Give me a yes in the chat. Yeah. Beautiful. All right. Let's get to it. So habits of top performing students. So what do these top performing students do? And again, top performing, I'm qualifying as these people, these students that pass all of like these courses consecutively, consistently on the first try with high marks, right? Like 85s, 90s, 90 plus. What are they doing? And I've had some of these students because I've had students that join from my group sessions from course one and go all the way to, simulation two. And consistently, I'm like, wow, these guys are killing it. What are they doing? And I talk to them and I see them and I learn essentially what they're doing right. So there's three main things that we're going to look at. One is top performing students are highly motivated, highly, highly motivated to get the courses done. And we're going to go more in detail to that in a second. Second is they're highly practical. Okay. And third is they have healthy stress. Everybody has stress, but they have healthy stress. Okay. So highly motivated. We're going to start with that one first. Now, being highly motivated, there's a lot, it's a very vague term, but generally these people, they are motivated by money, passion, or a personal situation to get the courses done. And this motivation is key. I can't tell you how many times I've seen really good, smart people making good progress on the courses lose their passion or lose their motivation for whatever reason, and then procrastinate or then take way, way longer to get the courses done. And not to scare you, but it does happen a lot on C2 just because of the nature of C2 being so vast of a course. People get through C1, they're happy, they're stoked, they go to C2, and then they're like, oh my God, why is it so much longer? Right? It's triple the length. And that's where a lot of this kind of motivation needs to stick. Because if your motivation will stick, you'll stick through it. But if you don't have a strong enough motivation, it's not really going to work. And this is where people kind of have this issue. Because you might be motivated by one thing or another, but usually around C2 is when people start questioning, why am I getting my license? Like, do I even need to? Should I even get my license? Oh, the industry's so bad, blah, blah, blah. And it's crazy because I've had people from C3, C4, sending messages like, oh, Shiva, I did all these courses, but I don't know if I should get my license. And usually it's because the course was kicking their ass at the time, right? Which means it wasn't a matter of, they were backing out on the decision they made before because it was getting harder. And as you guys know, for everything in life, nothing's really easy. But if you make a decision, you want to stick with it because, good things come to people who wait and who work. So you got to be willing to do what it takes, right? But passion motivated students almost always perform better on exams. So I've had people that are motivated by money, obviously they want to make a lot. People that are motivated by personal situations, like they want to make money for their family or they want to make a career switch. And I've had people that are motivated by passion. They say, Shiva, oh, people tell me all the time that, I'm a great conversationalist. I'm going to be an amazing real estate agent, but it's just these damn courses. Those people, those are the people that typically stick with it the most because they're not doing it for anybody else. They're not doing it for their mom, their dad, their wife, their husband, their kids. They're doing it for themselves. And that's something that, really sticks to your core because you're like, I'm trying to prove this to myself. Obviously, I want to give my kids or my, wife a better life, but doing it for yourself, that's the one that sticks. And it's the passion. It's saying that, oh, I don't want to just get these courses done for money because when it's money, there's a lot of different ways to make money too. And you'll be like, oh, well, I have a job. I can just get another job, right? But the passion says, oh, I love real estate, and that's why I want to do it. So these people usually are very engaged. Okay, they're very engaged. They're very ready to do what they need to, and they're really ready to study. So what's important for you guys today is to just think about for yourself for a second, what is motivating you to get your license up? And is there any way that you can kind of turn it into maybe something of a passion for you, right? Now, you're not all of you guys are going to be passionate about real estate, and that's okay. But you got to be willing to do what it takes, right? And you got to be engaged. So if it is money, right, just make sure that you're cognizant of that and you try to be a little bit more engaged, you know. Um, but if it is something of a passion, like you do like real estate a little bit, even a little bit, you can stoke the fire and make that a little bit bigger. And so you can make that passion take more control for you. And that's going to help you stick with it when it gets hard because it's going to get hard in C2. It's going to get hard in C4. And C4 is right at the end, that's the thing that sucks. Like I'd love to tell people it gets easier, but it just gets different. You do the same amount of studying, same type of studying. So if you really nail how you study, it does get easier. But a lot of times people are doing trial and error throughout the courses. So by the time they get to C4, they're also like, oh my God, this is so hard. I thought everybody said C2 was the beast, right? But it's just a matter of how you study. So, and we're going to go through those today. So that's the first thing, highly, highly motivated. Okay. Number two is these people are highly practical. Okay. Highly practical. So what do we mean? Now, generally, if we want to guarantee a pass on the exam, right, there's really two ways. One is we would need to know 100% of the content by heart. And you guys can imagine that's pretty hard to do with C2, right? For example, 20 modules. So that's probably not going to be an option for most people. Second is we need to know the exact exam questions, which again is not really going to be possible. It's, you know, there's so many different questions, exams. Even if we did the exam 10 times, we'd keep getting a different exam. So that's also pretty hard to do. The second best way to pass is you focus on retaining as much information as you can. And this boils down to the quantity of hours, so how many hours you study, and the quality, so the effectiveness of actually, what you're actually studying. Okay. What that means is basically how many hours you study is very important, right? The more you study, typically the better results and the quality. So the better you study, meaning the better for you, obviously the more information you're going to retain. And the more information you retain typically means better scores in the exam, right? Now, some later exams like C3, C4, even though you might know the information, the questions can still be very tricky and those can trip you up. So obviously we do have to practice questions and the wording for those because I've seen a lot of people that know everything in the course, but they still fail C3 or C4 because the exams are hard. And that's okay. So that's something that will come over time as you do more questions, right? Now, what that means is quality and quantity can make up for one another. So if you only study 1 hour a day, but it's really, really focused and it's really good studying for you, so you know how you learn best and you're exercising that as much as possible, taking advantage of it, that is going to be better than 2 or 3 hours of distracted on your phone every 20 minutes, kids running around studying, right? So as much as possible, what I always try to recommend to people is, have a consistent study time every day. Make sure it's focused study time. This is not possible for everyone, but if you can, closing your room door, you alone without a phone in sight, just you study and have a game plan. Be organized. What are we getting done this week? What are we getting done for this session? Right? A lot of times procrastination, for example, is not knowing where to start. Like, oh, I should study, but oh, it's so big, and it makes this kind of obstacle. But you got to make it really easy for yourself. You got to say, what's the easiest thing I could do? Let's just start by reading one page, one line. That's going to stop procrastination because that's doable. And then you give yourself permission to not study at all after. So you read one line and you say, okay, I did my line. Chances are you're going to want to study more though. So that's one of the techniques that we use to try to, you know, stop procrastinating. You want to make it easy. You want to make it simple. You want to have a game plan. So before I leave today, for example, to let's say I study 2 hours today, before I leave my desk today, I'm going to say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to do this, this, and this. I come tomorrow, I look at my note, oh, okay, boom, and you get right into it. So that's going to help a little bit. But quality, quantity, they make up for one another. If you do both, if you increase both, that's obviously going to be best. Now, find the sweet spot comes to three major things that you can do right now. So sweet spot of quality and quantity. How much time should I study? And how much focus or how well should I be studying? So there's a sweet spot between both. So there's three things that you can do right now to kind of increase your scores. The first is you got to be honest. The second is you got to change something. And the third is you always have to self-evaluate. Okay. So we're going to start with number one, being honest. This is important because, a lot of times before I help anybody, and for anyone who's done a group session, you guys know this, I'll chat to you guys on the phone for a little bit, 10, 15, 20 minutes to get a sense of where are you right now. Because yeah, I could throw everybody in these group sessions, but it's not going to help everyone the same way, right? And it might not even be work for you guys, right? It really depends on where you are right now in your courses, in your studying. Do you need the help? What kind of help? And then I can kind of better direct it. So what that means is you guys can do this yourself. You want to ask yourself a lot of questions to figure out where are you right now. So being honest, it goes down to where am I right now in the course? Where do I want to be? How many hours have I been putting in? What study methods or materials have I been using? And have they been working? And you want to be results based. Okay. So where I am right now means, okay, I've been on C2 for 2 months and I've only read module one. And we're not judging, we're being honest. Being honest is so important. A lot of us are scared of the answers, so we don't ask ourselves the questions. 2 months, we've read one module. That's great, that's fine. There's a lot of people that don't even do that much, where they, spend 6 months and before they even get started. So don't worry, that's great. Where do we want to be? Well, ideally, I'd love to finish this course by the end of the month. Okay, how many days do we have left in the month? Well, let's see. It's, let's say June 13th. So we have about less than 20 days. Okay. How many hours have I been putting in? Not enough. I've only been doing an hour, but I have kids, I have responsibilities, blah, blah, blah. What study methods or materials I've been using? Oh, I've been using the Humber slides or I've been using Passit, right? Just listing these stuff down. You just want to be honest where you are. And then you look, have they been working? Have they been working? You want to ask yourself as a results-based question. People are very subjective in the courses, and as humans, we're very emotional, right? So we're not very logical all the time. So I've had a lot of people, and it's so common, where people just doubt themselves. And even the top performing students, they doubt themselves, but they just kind of do the exam despite the fact that they feel like they're not ready, and then they come back with a 95. And they're like, oh my God, how did I do that? And I'm like, well, you've been studying 4 hours a day. I would be surprised if you didn't, So you want to be results based because a lot of times you're going to feel underprepared or you're going to feel not confident. You're going to feel like you're not doing enough. You're going to be scared and nervous. It's normal. It's like so normal for these exams. But that doesn't help us because you're going to be like, oh, I'm not ready. But chances are you are ready and you can do it next week or 2 weeks. A lot of times when I talk to people, they tell me they're not ready, they're scared. After asking them a lot of these questions, I'm like, hey, like if you are doing what you're saying you're doing, and you've been making the progress you're saying you're making, you should be ready by the next week or next week and a half. And they're like, oh wow, really? And then they start to think, and they're just like kind of be nervous and holding it back for no reason. So results based means getting your hand on either some practice questions. So Passit is great to do that. But also testing yourself verbally. For example, you guys can download that checklist I have and go through that checklist, and then you say, okay, which of the topics can I explain by myself out loud? So for example, like if we look at course 2 and we're looking at the agreement of purchase and sale, how many clauses can I list? Or if I can't remember them all, can I see the name and then explain it myself? So irrevocability clause, spousal consent clause, confirmation of acceptance, right? Can I actually explain them in my own words? That's a great testing method. Now, it's very hard for everybody. It's not like I've seen a lot of people that can pass the exam but cannot explain stuff. So that's okay, but it is a really, really good technique that we're going to go through later to help you learn. But try to be results based, right? Personally, I did the verbal one where I would test myself verbally. If you got questions, if you want to grab yourself some questions, that's going to be helpful as well. But be results based. Don't be subjective. Okay. So that's the first thing. That's our synopsis. Where are we right now? Where do we want to be? Gives us a clear goal and clear idea, baseline of what are we doing. Okay. From there, now we can make improvements. Okay. If we don't do this, we're not able to make any improvements. We have to do the foundational work. Now we can say, okay, let's change something. And again, this is why I started this webinar today by saying, don't implement all these things at once. Oh, Shiva told me to do this. No, it's not going to work because you're going to change so many things that the things that were working, you're going to change as well. And it's not going to be helpful. Okay. You got to change one or two things so we can do this in a process, right? Obviously, the earlier in the course, the better. If you're in C1, these changes that you make by the end of C1, ideally, you'll be able to find what works. And then you stick with it and then it's streamlined. But change something. So you can't expect different results doing the same thing. You've got to change one or two things. Okay. That might be time, that might be quality of your study. So one method is you put in more hours. Super simple. This is the easiest in terms of effort. You just have to put in more hours. You find more hours in your day. A lot of people tell me they're busy, and it's with everything. Everybody is busy, but it's a priority. Is real estate a priority to you in your life? Is it a big priority? Because then you're going to find time for it. Truth is, you will find time and you will make time for things that are important to you. You know, you guys might have met these people. Like I have some friends, and you guys might even be some of these people who they're like always busy, like always busy, always doing something. And they never have time for some additional things, or they're always in a rush. Always like, oh, I gotta get this done because I gotta go here and I gotta. And the truth is, like, usually for those people, their priorities are just a bit all over the place. Now, sometimes they do have a lot of things that they want to do at the same time. So they're doing a lot of things at once, which is, fine. But the point of priorities is you narrow it down to one, two, or three things. Try to focus on those things in your life so you don't burn out and you can fully focus on those things, right? Again, it's not possible for everyone, but point is, if you can put in more hours, if you have more hours in your day, if you can find more hours, find them, make the time, and put that into your schedule. You got to wake up earlier, you got to wake up earlier. You got to sleep later, you got to sleep later. You got to do in your lunch break, do in your lunch break, right? There's a lot of things that I've wanted to do in my life before where I, cut out the lunch break, cut out my sleep. It depends how much of a sacrifice you have to make. So it really depends. Second is you change your materials. So you try other things. Now, one of the biggest changes that you guys could make probably starting today is changing your study materials. A lot of times when I talk to people, they're using just the Humber slides, or they're using just Pass It, or just Minicram. And we'll go through kind of what is the best way to study. But ideally, you want to have your hand on some sort of notes and some sort of practice questions. That's going to be kind of ideal. Okay. So what that means is if you're just using Pass It, it might work. And this worked for people for C1, C2, but usually around C3, C4, they get stuck. And we're looking for a holistic method so that we don't kind of get this, oh shit, I failed. Now what do I do? Right? From the start, what can we do to kind of get this done fast? So what that means is change materials. Get your hands on notes, get your hands on questions. Use both. Don't just use Pass It. Don't just use Minicram, right? Use both. I recommend obviously my notes because those are handwritten, right? Minicram, a bit robotic. So my notes are free anyway, so I'd recommend using those. Or if you take your own notes, it's great as well. But please don't spend so much time on those Humber slides because they're going to take you years to go through. And there's a lot of stuff to give you, which is not going to be on the exam. So my recommendation would be to skim them, at least. Or what a lot of people do is they'll click through all the slides and then study from some other notes or something. And that is a really, really much faster way to get through the course. And it might seem like you're skipping stuff, but you're not. You will be fine. Okay. Third is you change your study methods. So we put in more time, we change our materials, we change our methods. So how do we actually study? Because I can give you my notes, I can give you questions, I can give you tons of great materials, but if you're still studying the wrong way, it's not going to work. So that's our next thing. And remember, change one thing at a time. So things that actually work that you can actually do right now. And this is going to be keeping it simple because remember, most of the best solutions are simple. So you just got to try it. My recommendation is you try something from today. Don't just be like, I've heard that before, or I've done that before. I've had people that have like, for example, been using my notes or been doing the right things, but they just haven't been doing it, you know, to the same degree, maybe not studying properly. Maybe they're not focused when they study. So you really have to analyze for yourself. What is it that's keeping you from doing it faster? So again, same time, study time every day, focus study time, no distractions, no phone, nobody to talk to. Okay. Second is note some practice questions. You want to minimize those number slides as much as possible, right? You're studying from the notes, you're studying the practice questions, you're looking at what you get wrong. You can take additional notes if you want, but just keep in mind it will take more time. So I know a lot of you guys are note takers, handwriters. It's very difficult for you because once you get to C2 or C4, they're extremely long courses. So you taking your additional notes is going to take more time. So although you might remember stuff better when you write them, it might be better to either write very small bullet points or to simply just try to read and study from reading first before you start taking notes. Because I can tell you I've had a lot of note takers and they just take significantly more time to get courses done because they're taking notes. And they don't always have to. I've had a lot of note takers. I tell them, hey, you've taken this books of notes and it's been 2 months now, you forgot everything. So why don't we try something else? And we try something else and it works. So, and third, try different materials before going all in. And this is for everything. I've seen a lot of people, they're like, oh, I saw in the group that everybody uses Pass-It, so I bought Pass-It. And again, Pass is great, but test it out, right? Test it out for a course. Do it properly as it's supposed to be done every day. Do a few questions. Don't just buy it and do it a little bit, or don't just buy it and say, I'm going to do this for the rest of my courses, right? You want to try a little bit, see if it works, evaluate every week, and then you can make adjustments. That's the fastest way to be fast, right? It might feel slower because you're kind of adjusting, but it's going to save you in the long run. A lot of people, they get through C1 and C2 super quick, right? They just use Pass-It, let's say. Oh, boom, boom, done. And then they get C3 and they fail. And we have that guy who took their time in C1 to test different materials and eventually they catch up. So slower is faster in this case. Okay. And then focus on effectiveness and not efficiency. What that means is effectiveness is kind of how, so for example, efficiency means what is your output per unit of time? So, for example, if I work in a factory and let's say I I work I'm working for 7 hours out of an 8 hour day. That is my efficiency. Meaning like I only took an hour lunch break and I'm back in the factory working. So that's my efficiency, 7 hours out of 8. That's pretty good, right? Most workers, they'll dilly daddle, talk to their coworkers. Me, I'm on the line 7 hours. Okay. Effectiveness is how well are you doing that line? So let's say I'm stacking boxes. So I'm doing it for 7 hours, but all my boxes are falling over. I'm missing some of the boxes. I take a quick nap here and there, but I'm still on the line. That's effectiveness. So you got to focus on your effectiveness more. Efficiency is great, but I don't really care about the hours if the hours are not focused. People tell me I studied 2 hours, 3 hours. I study 6 hours a day. I've had people that come to me, they tell me I study 6 hours a day, Shiva, and I'm still not able to crack the exam. And you get into it and you find effectiveness is not there. They're not studying the right way. They're studying with distractions, or they're so overwhelmed because they're using so many different things. And that's obviously not going to be a good thing. Okay. So focus on what you're doing. Make sure you analyze, make sure you ask yourself those questions. And then we're going to look at healthy stress. Healthy stress, you guys have all heard of this before, I'm sure. It is a helpful tool that you can use to get this done. Now, a lot of you guys in the course are going to have stress. I know that much. You're going to be like super stressed about this course, super overwhelmed, super annoyed, frustrated with Humber. But turning that into something healthy is your best option. Now, this is not a matter of pride or ego. It's a matter of what can we do with that energy? Because it's fiery energy. And if you can use that to drive action to take you forward, it's going to be very helpful for you. So, healthy stress looks like usually something of that where you can drive your action, right? It's not going to paralyze you. All of my top performing students have had anxiety, worry, and stress before. It's very normal. You don't have to shun it out, right? You got to feel it. You got to allow it. It's a good thing. You know, fear and anxiety are good things. They're meant to help you. They're teachers. So you want to learn from them. So we use that to drive our action. Okay. What that pretty much means is we're going to try not to get paralyzed by the stress or to delay our progress, but we're going to use it to just be a bit more precautious, right? And you'll find once you sit with it, if you actually feel it, it will go away. And I've had a lot of people who I've tutored who have had like test anxiety, for example, and they've developed this insane test anxiety where anytime they do a test, they just like blank or they can't focus. And it's from, years of schooling where schooling makes you fear tests. But again, we want to sit with it. We want to practice sitting down, doing questions and feeling. The more you feel it, and the more you realize that, hey, like I'm going to get through these courses anyways. It might not be now, but it might not be tomorrow, but it might be next week. Then the stress doesn't really come. You got to trust yourself, like, hey, I'm not going to quit. I'm going to stick with it. If I don't quit, then I can't lose. So I'll be fine. A lot of times there's a lot of stress. There can be stress for many, many reasons. Obviously, depending on your situation. But try to identify what it is, try to turn to something else. Okay. And overachievers, they always win. This is something I mentioned in one of the other webinars. Uh, the top performing students that I have had, often they're doing both. They're bolstering their quality and they're bolstering their quantity. They're studying 3 hours a day and they're studying very, very effectively. So everything I tell them they're doing, and they're analyzing what works and what doesn't. And they're reviewing stuff that I was like, hey, like you don't need to review that. You've done enough. They're like, no, Shiv, I want to review it. They review that. They do above and beyond. They're overachieving. And they minimize the chances of them failing. They study so well and so hard that it becomes unrealistic that they're not going to pass. That's kind of what you want to do. That's how you're going to get through these courses. Okay. So they work harder, they put in more hours, they use better quality materials, study methods, and they only self-evaluate. Okay. It's pretty much all the things I just mentioned. Okay. So that being said, if you do these things, you will be in the top 10% of students, and you'll be able to eliminate all this procrastination, this discouragement, this anxiety, the confusion, all the stagnation. You'll be able to eliminate all of that. And so if you have failed a course or you failed an exam or you're feeling like, oh, like I'm never going to get through this, you got to remember the way to get back up is you got to identify the problem, you got to make a plan, you got to take action immediately. Do not sit on it. The longer you sit, the more dissipated your energy is going to get, right? Feel that fire, right? If you're angry about failing, be angry about failing. Angry is good energy. That can help you. But you want to put that back into your courses and your study. So if you failed once or twice or 3 times, don't worry. I've seen people fail 7, 8 times. You wouldn't believe. But the crazy thing is they stuck with it. And for example, I had a guy, he failed 8 times. He failed C2 8 times. Not to scare you. It's not super common, but for him, it was very difficult. He failed 8 times, and now he's getting his license. He just sent me his picture, I think, a week ago, with his picture on a listing and everything. It was insane. I was like, holy crap, look how far you came. And C2, for example, he failed 8 times, but C1, he also failed three. C3, he failed a few times. C4, he finally passed on his first try. And that was like such a win for him. It was crazy. In simulation 2, he passed on his first try. And then he just sent me his listing picture. So it's insane how things turn around. You just got to keep putting the effort and stay consistent. Okay. Okay. So as a synopsis for everything we just did, the more you study, the faster you're going to get the courses done. The better you study, the faster you're going to get the courses done. So try to apply some of those things today. A lot of the stuff I just told you are questions that you got to ask yourself. But now, looking at the long run, so I'm going to show you guys some more specific strategies. This is one of the webinars I did, I think last year or something. So it goes a lot more in depth into some of these strategies I'm going to show you right now. We're going to go and I'm going to introduce a few things. This webinar will go a lot more in depth. I believe it's on my channel, but you can also scan this QR code if you want to check it out later and save the link. But we're going to look at the 4 things that you can do for the long run to basically get your license faster. A lot of times it takes people a year or 2 years. We're going to try and, okay. And to give you an idea, I've had people that have, I know people that passed their courses, all of them, and got their license within 2 months. 2 months was the quickest. It's insane. I know. Madness. I could never do 2 months. That is insane. 2 months. I've seen people do 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, and then pass out, all kinds of numbers. But it's shocking what you can do with a little bit of passion, effort, energy, and studying. It's insane. So we're going to look at 4 things. The first thing, to pass faster. We're going to look at doing the courses back to back, sticking with a schedule. We're going to talk a bit more in depth about that. Keeping it simple and asking for help. Okay. So the first thing, doing courses back to back. When you do your courses back to back, C1, 2, 3, 4, what I mean is you want to minimize the amount of time or break that you take between each course. The reason is it's easier to stay on schedule. So there's less friction, there's less procrastination, there's less of a feeling of having to push this ball up the hill because you've already been studying an hour a day. So might as well just continue for the next 2 months. And it seems like a lot, but when you take it week by week, it just becomes part of your routine and your schedule. So it's much easier that way, and you'll make much more better progress. And second, it reduces your revision time because there's a lot of repetition from C1 that goes all the way into C2 and C3 and C4. So the closer together you do these courses, I guarantee you it will save you a lot more time and effort than you even realize. There's a lot of stuff even in my C2 group sessions that I have to repeat, that I've added because we have to revise them because people forget. And even the courses that I did, for example, C1 I did within 5 days. Amazing. But then I think I took a month or 2, or even a bit longer before I started C2. And C2 took me a little bit longer than 5 days, obviously because it's big, but also because I took some time between C1. And that meant I had to review some stuff because they will test you on C1 stuff. And that kind of took more time. So reducing that time is going to help the most. This can be very, very helpful. Okay. Faster learning in general. Number 2 is the schedule. I'm talking a lot about the schedule. Make your schedule. Stick to it every single day. So a few techniques to stick with it. So ideally, like the perfect situation of like the equal balance of what I found of you getting these courses done fast without burning out would be studying 3 to 4 hours a day. Now, that doesn't mean you have to do that much. It just means obviously the more hours you put, the faster you're going to get the courses done. Now, from my experience, studying 5 to 6 hours typically ends up being a bit more of diminishing returns because it's not going to help as much because there's only a certain capacity your brain has to learn information in a day and to focus in a day. So typically 3 4 hours works best for most people. And the way that we're going to break our stagnation meaning procrastination or not wanting to study this long, is you can convince yourself to read 1 page or for 1 minute. That's a really, really great technique. What that means is you're going to say, okay, today I'm going to read 1 line from the 1 module from the 1 page, and then I'm done for today. I'm allowed to leave if I want to. And then you get out of bed, you go to your desk, you read the 1 line, and you're like, well, I already got out on my bed and everything. I might as well read. And a lot of times you'll end up reading more. And so that's just an example. It could be anything. But the point is you got to make it easy. You got to remove your distractions. Another really good tip that I've used a lot is environment design. So you want to make sure that your environment around you is conducive to you learning. If you're studying in your bed, chances are you're going to fall asleep or you're going to be sleepy or you're not going to want to study. If you have a space separate where you can actually work and you can always work there, it's going to help you. If you can put your phone away in the drawer of a desk or in another room, that's going to help a ton. You're not going to get that distraction, right? So eliminating distractions as much as possible. eliminating these exposures to different things. Keeping it very, really, really boring and dry is going to help you stay focused the most. Okay. And we got chain tasks. Tasks basically mean um, when we are doing something, we want to chain it with something else that we're already doing in our routine. So essentially, that means like if I, let's say, want to study in the morning, what I'm going to do is I'm going to um, write on a paper, okay, after I brush my teeth, I will study for 1 hour. And then I say, after I study for 1 hour, I'm going to eat my breakfast. And you kind of continue like that. And the point of writing it is it's statistically, you're a lot more likely to get it done. And when you put it in your routine, it becomes a lot easier because you're like, oh, okay, like every day after this, I do this and then I do that. And it becomes part of the routine. So keep in mind, studying a lot or studying every day or getting anything done every day, it doesn't go down to willpower or discipline. Motivation helps, discipline helps, willpower helps, but ultimately it goes down to the system and your environment. The people that do more things or get more things done usually simply have a better system and a better environment to that. They get up and let's say their alarm, their cell phone is in another room. So you have to go get up and shut it off, right? That's how they don't stay in bed for 20 minutes. Right? Or if they want to, study, they just have less distractions and it's part of the routine. So you got to work with yourself to figure out what works for you. Okay. Number 3, we're going to keep it simple. Simply meaning, again, don't change everything at once and don't use 7, 8 different materials. Start with one, see what works, see what doesn't, tweak, get another one if you need it. See what works, what doesn't, get another one if you need it. Now, I recommend you don't need more than 2 or 3 study materials at once. There's a lot of different websites and all these different things, fun gadgets you can get. But again, keep it simple. Okay. Final works, stick with it. Personally, I only use those Humber slides, and still, I was able to get these courses done really, really fast. It's insane. Yeah, I literally only use those Humber slides. I studied from there and still like C1 in 5 days. I honestly don't even know how I did that, but I took my own notes as well, and I was just using those Humber slides. So it's totally doable. You guys are way smarter than I am. So you guys can do it faster. It's just a matter of finding what works, keeping it simple, and getting that routine, that consistency. Okay. And number 4, our last one, is asking for help. This is so, so important because there's a lot of times where we're going to need help, but we're not going to want to ask for it. And especially when you study, especially for real estate, because all of you guys are doing this alone, studying online alone in your room, it's very boring, very dry, and it's not fun, right? So obviously that's why group sessions help, like the ones I do, because you get to meet people. But if you know people or you have friends or family in your house that you can ask for help, that's going to help you stick with it a lot better. So asking for it when you need it and being willing to trade your time so you can study more, right? So this means, like, for example, um, when I was doing my courses, I had this one friend that was always checking in on me to make sure I was getting the courses done. And honestly, without them, it would have been really difficult to get it done because they were always like, I did C1, let's say, in 5 days. 2 months I took off and they were like, hey, like, Shiva, aren't you doing those courses? And I was like, oh, yeah, the courses. Yeah, the courses. And I was like, okay, I should do the courses because I don't want to, disappoint them and they're going to keep calling me. And it was helpful. So you get some kind of accountability partner can be very helpful. Second is I would kind of borrow family members and get them to test me on things. So remember that technique I said where try explain those topics in the checklist out loud? That's called active recall. It's a very helpful technique. So I would do that with myself, but what would help even farther is getting someone else to ask me those questions. So they would go through the notes, randomly pick a page and say, okay, explain me this topic. There's 4 types of things that you need to know from this. And I'll try to explain it. And that's way more helpful than you doing it systematically. Because if you're studying module 1 and you say, okay, let me cover my eyes, it's from module 1. So your brain's better at remembering and piecing together information and making this puzzle piece. Where when people ask you randomly, you can't really have the context of a module. It's a lot harder to do. So it's actually really, really helpful to do that with somebody else. Okay. So ask for help when you need it. Be willing to invest more time and invest in yourself. There's a lot of these materials online like Pass and Minicram that can be helpful. So you want to check it out and try it out and see the reviews and see what works. Um, I would recommend like I wouldn't recommend Minicram. I just don't think it's really that helpful. And you'd better off using notes that are handwritten. So not like a robot and they're free. Passit can be helpful, but just keep in mind it tapers off in C3 and C4. So it's just not as close for the exam. But otherwise, it still can be helpful. It's good questions. And then there's obviously, a lot of other small materials you can use. So definitely do your research, check out what works and what doesn't. Get some opinions on different things. Most important thing is just try things out. Try them out and see what works. Okay. So that is all of the big, big strategies I want to give you guys today. There's a lot of stuff. Hopefully, there's something that you could take away from today. Um, and drop me a yes or no. Was that helpful? Was that not helpful? Did you learn at least one thing from today? You know, give me a yes or no in the chat or thumbs up or thumbs down. Because ideally, you guys take one thing from today. If you can take one thing from today, that's going to be kind of, you know, goal. That's the goal. That's my job completed. um, and again, these are some of the free stuff that you guys can get if you don't already have it. Some checklists, some of the free practice questions. These are stuff that are up there for free, so you can use them totally by yourself anytime you want. And then obviously the YouTube channel, if you guys do want to watch some of the videos, I have videos on every topic, pretty much like every course, what I did, what you can do, different techniques, brokerages, interviewing brokerages, all kinds of crazy videos. So check those out as well if you want to. That seems helpful. And just remember, you don't got to take months. Doesn't have to be hard. Doesn't have to be stressful. Like I said, the students that I do that I with the group sessions, they usually only study 1-2 hours and do a few hundred practice questions, and they pass them in 3 weeks. So if that is something that you're interested in, those group sessions do start next week. So you guys obviously can text me, reach out to me, whatever it is. So we basically do 5 live classes with a group. We're doing a few hundred practice questions, and you're going to be able to get recordings for every class and tons of additional things. So usually those group sessions, they're based on very similar to what we did today, but they're going to be based on what people have seen before. So after doing 500-600 people, a lot of stuff are repetitive and a lot of stuff you're going to need and a lot of stuff you don't. So I kind of teach you through the entire course in those 5 classes. I give you annotated forms, notes, checklists, bonus pictures, materials to help you understand the information. And then we go through practice questions, which again are just a little bit more closer to the wording of the exam just because, we formulated it over time. So the topics are a little bit closer. So that's essentially what that looks like. That takes us about 3 weeks to finish. So most people pass in 3-4 weeks. And that's an option for you guys if you guys are serious, if you want to get this kick started, if you're feeling like, you know what, I need someone to, push me and keep me on track, then that's totally an option as well. Okay. And don't be afraid to check out also my the YouTube channel, different interviews I've had. So I've helped tons of people obviously till now. Elena, Charu, these are just 2 out of so many we've done so far. And different interviews I've done as well. These are really cool, these interviews. I started doing them recently, and they're fun because these are people I've tutored from like, C1 or C2 and helped them all the way to get their license. And then I brought them on for the interview to ask them like, hey, how did you get through the course? What did you do? And what are you doing now as a realtor? So Daniela, for example, here, she actually had a really hard time with courses. And so I won't go too much in detail. Guys can watch the video, but she had quite a hard time with the courses, to the point where she was going to give up. And we started doing our sessions, and well, she's licensed now. To spoil the ending, and she got a listing within 2 months of her being licensed, which was insane. And Charu as well. Charu didn't have as much of a hard time, but the group sessions were just so much faster for her because every month she was getting an exam done. So we stuck with it until she kind of got her license. And now she's fully licensed. And she had a lot of super practical tips of when you do get your license, what it's really like. Because the reality is so different than what Hummer teaches us. And she was really, really good at narrowing down on those points. So I'd highly recommend checking out those. Those are interesting to you. Okay. And you guys can scan that QR code or go to that link if you want to apply for those sessions. And if you guys have questions, drop them in the chat. I'm going to check out the questions now in the chat and answer some of these. So, okay, we got a question from Chanel. Yeah, Chanel, looking forward to seeing you next week for the C3. She said, would buying passive for C3 be necessary along with the group sessions? I've heard mixed things about passive for C3. Yeah, you're not wrong. So passive is not going to be as helpful as it was for C1 or C2. For some reason, C3, C4, it tapers off. So what that means is it's going to be helpful in the sense of you have questions to do and you have quantity, but it's not going to be related to the exam in terms of wording, nor in terms of topics. So they test you on random things that don't even come up on the exam. They give you random math questions, which take you an hour to learn, and they don't come on the exam. So because you're doing the group sessions, I'd recommend not getting it because I'm going to give you enough questions and stuff anyways. For those of you guys that maybe are trying to do the course on your own, it could be helpful. Again, just in terms of quantity. Questions are questions. They're still going to be helpful regardless, but just take them with a grain of salt, obviously, because some of the stuff won't come up on the exam. Okay. Any other questions from anybody? Any other kind of small question you got? And yeah, hopefully like this was helpful for you guys. Hopefully this gave you guys some tips. And if there's no other questions, well, thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you so much for attending. Please try to apply one or two things from today and try to get that started, kick-started, try to get yourself in the right lane. I think it's going to be really, really helpful for you guys. And if at the bare minimum, I could provide you guys some motivation. I've seen a lot of people have so many hard times with the courses. Through this, you guys will be fine. You guys will get through it one way or another, right? Okay, I see Zlata said, can you share pricing info or do we need to sign up and contact privately? Yes, if you're interested in group sessions, go to the link, put an application. Again, like I said, group sessions are not going to be for everyone. So that's why I always like to talk to people, chat, see if it's going to work, see if there's something else we can do. And I'll give you guys like all the special details there too. Okay. But aside from that, thank you so much for attending. Please have yourself a good evening. Study a little bit before you go to sleep, obviously. And I will see you guys soon, either in the group sessions or, in our next webinar or something. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Take care. And we'll see you guys soon now. All right. Bye, guys.